country music has always been about real stories and truth.
He don't love me like tequila.
Country star Miranda Lambert grew up in a house with no heat and an outhouse in the freezing dark. But that wasn't the worst part. At just 6 years old, her parents dressed her in a cheerleading costume and sent her out to gather evidence in adult cases. By the time she was 7, their investigation files ended up in a presidential impeachment, and the secrets she learned during those years would haunt her music forever. This is the story of a little girl who saw too much, lost too much, and paid a price nobody should have to pay. Miranda Lee Lambert came into the world on November 10, 1983, in Longview, Texas, carrying a family story in her name. She was named after her great-grandmother, Lucy Miranda. So even as a baby, she was tied to something older than herself. Soon her parents moved to Lindale, a small Texas town that looked simple from the outside, but held a lot of strain behind closed doors. When Miranda was 6, the life they knew cracked. Her parents' private detective agency collapsed after the Texas oil crisis hit hard in 1989, and money vanished faster than they could chase it. They lost their home. The family moved in with relatives, trying to catch their breath, and then ended up renting a worn farmhouse with boarded-up windows and no central heat. Winter nights there were brutal. Miranda had to run to an outhouse in the freezing dark. The refrigerator was often empty. Some days dinner was whatever they could hunt, fish, or gather. It was survival, not comfort. She watched her parents try to hold everything together, and that early poverty settled in her bones and taught her that nothing was guaranteed, and hard work was not optional. Her parents, Rick and Bev Lambert, did not have quiet office jobs. They were private investigators, and their work bled into the household. Miranda grew up around case files, whispered names, and quiet tension. Sometimes she was pulled into it. When she was about 6 or 7, they dressed her in a cheerleading costume and sent her out to help gather evidence in a cheating spouse case, because nobody would suspect a child. She walked into adult messes long before she should have. Then, in 1994, her parents were hired by lawyers working for Paula Jones to dig into President Bill Clinton. It was national news territory. Their files were later subpoenaed and became part of the impeachment proceedings in the House. Miranda watched strangers argue about things that had started on her parents' dining room table. Those years were full of real danger, real secrets, and real betrayals, and all of that would later show up in her songs. Her dad brought another world into the house, too. Before he became a private investigator, Rick Lambert had been a Dallas police officer and a guitarist in a country rock band called Contraband during the 1970s. He kept that side of himself alive. At home, he played Merle Haggard, Guy Clark, John Prine, and other songwriters who told hard truths with simple words. Miranda soaked it in. He put a guitar in her hands and showed her chords. And he treated songwriting like work, not magic. Even when money was tight, her parents pushed her toward music. They believed in it so much that they later used money that could have gone to her college costs to fund her early performances. By the time her first album came along, she was writing with her father, and their names sat together in the credits, a quiet sign of how deep that family music line really ran. By 13, the things she had seen and heard were already turning into songs. She was a teenager in East Texas, but her lyrics carried the weight of adults who had been through divorces, affairs, and courtrooms. Her family moved from Longview to Lindale, and the detective work kept bringing dark stories to their doorstep. Those stories found their way into her notebooks. She began singing in East Texas honky-tonks, smoky rooms where grown men nursed beers, and did not expect a young girl to walk out and own the stage. Yet audiences fell silent when she started. At 16, she fronted the house band at Rio Palm Isle, a legendary club where Elvis Presley and Willie Nelson had once played. That room did not care about her age. It cared about whether she could command it. She learned how to handle hecklers, how to stare someone down, how to keep singing when someone yelled something ugly. Those nights gave her that sharp edge people would later hear in her voice. Around that time, she tried out for the Johnny High Country Music Review in Arlington, Texas, the same weekly show that had jump-started Leanne Rimes. She walked on stage at 16 and sang Patsy Cline's song Crazy. It was not an easy choice, because everyone knew that song and everyone had an opinion on it. Her delivery caught the judges. The review was strict and old-fashioned, filled with people who had heard hundreds of hopefuls, but she stood out enough to keep getting invited back. It was the first time she felt what professional scrutiny really meant. At the same time, some people in that scene told her she was too country even for country music. The insult stung, but it did not stop her. It lit a fire that would someday become songs about women who refused to sit still. Then came a turning point. In 2000, when she was 17, a family connection helped arrange a recording session in Nashville. Her father spent $6,000, almost everything they had saved, to give her a shot in the town she had dreamed about. She walked into the studio expecting to make country music. Instead, the producers pushed shiny pop leaning tracks that did not feel like her at all. They tried to smooth out the rough edges that had been built into her life. Miranda felt herself disappearing from her own songs. Finally, she walked out, devastated, because she knew what that $6,000 meant to her family. Later, she would call it a cheap lesson, because it showed her clearly what she never wanted to do again. Back in Texas, she turned that disappointment into work. She begged her dad to teach her more guitar, sat for hours practicing until her fingers hurt, and started turning her anger and stubbornness into original songs. These early tracks were simple and raw, full of heartbreak, suspicion, and rebellion. By 17, she had written enough material for an album. In 2001, she recorded 10 songs in a makeshift home studio, far away from the polished Nashville system. She put her own name on the cover, pressed the CDs herself, and sold them at local shows. That little independent album was proof that she did not need someone in a glass office to give her permission. All of this led to her first big national stage. In 2003, when she was 19, Miranda auditioned for the new television competition Nashville Star. Instead of picking a safe cover, she chose an original song that she had written with her father, called Greyhound Bound for Nowhere. The song told the story of a secret affair with a married person, a story she had not lived but had watched through her parents' private investigations. She told the judges that she had not faced many of those pains herself yet, but she had seen what betrayal did to people. Over 8,000 singers tried to get on the show that year. Only 12 were chosen. Miranda was one of them. During the 9-week run, she kept turning heads. She did not have the perfect polish some contestants had, but she had something rougher that people remembered. She sang songs like Hell on Heels with a calm kind of fire, and audiences started to feel like they knew her. Behind the scenes, there were battles. Producers pushed her to wear more revealing clothes to fit the television image they wanted. She refused. She chose jeans and boots instead, clothes that matched the Texas bars she had come from. That stubbornness almost cost her, but it also showed everyone around her that she would not trade herself in for a slot on a show. Later, she said the whole experience felt like going to college. It taught her camera work, stagecraft, and also how fake and political the business could be. When the season ended, she finished in 3rd place, behind Buddy Jewell and John Arthur Martinez. Yet her audition and performances became some of the moments fans kept replaying. Someone important had been watching. Tracy Gershon, a Sony music executive, saw something in her that other label people missed. While some executives doubted that a sharp-tongued, pistol-ready young woman could sell records, he kept pushing his company to take a chance. After the show ended, Miranda did not go home and wait by the phone. She hit the road. She played more than 200 shows a year in Texas. opening for acts like Coup de Grace and Jack Ingram, especially at places like Love and War in Texas. Night after night, she loaded in, played, and loaded out, slowly building a crowd that came specifically for her. In September 2003, just months after her third-place finish, Sony Nashville finally signed her. The deal was worth $300,000, a huge leap from the farmhouse with boarded windows and the empty fridge. It meant she could quit her waitressing job and pour herself into music full-time, but it also meant she had to move to Nashville and leave her familiar Texas life. That move would test how much control she could keep. Once in Nashville, Miranda did something risky. She insisted on live instruments on her first major label record. She was working on an album called Kerosene and co-producing tracks with Frank Little and Mike Rucke. Most labels preferred cleaner, more polished tracks built in big studios, but Miranda wanted the stomp and scrape of real players in a room. Sony wanted a smoother, more crossover-ready sound. She pushed back. She argued that the raw live feeling matched the stories she was telling. Those fights were tense, but she held her ground. When Kerosene came out in February 2005, the gamble paid off. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard Top Country Albums chart and sold about 53,000 copies in its first week, something almost unheard of for a brand new artist. The title track, Kerosene, told a revenge story about burning down an ex-lover's house. Radio programmers were stunned by the violent image. Conservative listeners started sending angry letters. Some people said she was glorifying arson. Others, especially women who felt unseen, felt like someone had finally said what they had only imagined. Even with all the noise, the song climbed to number 15 on the country charts and stamped her with a new label in the press, the Bad Girl of Country. The album did not just sound tough. It was built that way. Critics praised the live sound and called Kerosene something rare in modern mainstream country, a project that was catchy and friendly, yet sharper and more honest than it first looked. Songs like Kerosene and the early shape of what would later become Gunpowder and Lead carried a kind of anger that had not often been given to female singers. The same lyrics that made some people nervous became a lifeline for others, especially women tired of tidy endings. Miranda knew the backlash was part of it. She went on television and said calmly, "It is fantasy. Women have anger too." That one line turned into a rallying quote for her fans. The success did not come without a price. To promote Kerosene, she went on a grueling tour schedule, playing around 250 dates in about 18 months, including opening slots for country giant George Strait. One night during a show, a guitar string snapped in the middle of a song. She did not stop. She kept singing and playing through it, and the crowd watched her push past the mistake. Moments like that slowly turned skeptical audiences into believers. By 2006, the album had gone platinum. Yet the constant travel and pressure caught up with her. At one point, she collapsed backstage from exhaustion after a show. It was a warning sign of the burnout that would haunt her later, but it also showed how far she was willing to push herself for the work. Her second major album, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, took what Kerosene had started and pushed it even further. By 2007, she was back with another set of sharp songs. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend debuted at #1 on the Billboard Top Country Albums chart and reached #6 on the all-genre Billboard 200. More than 55,000 copies sold in the first week. The lead single, Famous in a Small Town, was rooted in her real Texas life, the kind of place where everybody knows your business before you do. The song reached #7 on the country chart and #52 on the Hot 100, giving her the first top 10 country hit of her career. The album was full of revenge, heartbreak, and small-town stories, and tracks like Gunpowder and Lead made it clear she was not interested in softening herself for radio. Behind the scenes, she was fighting for control again. During the making of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Miranda decided that the sound was slipping away from her. She felt the production moving closer to the safer Nashville template she had rejected before. At just 23 years old, she made a daring move. She fired a producer halfway through recording and took over the production role herself. That almost never happened for young artists at the time, especially for women. The choice strained her relationship with her label, but it saved the album's grit. Without that decision, songs like Gunpowder and Lead might not have sounded as fierce as they did. The move shocked people in town and sent a clear message that she would not hand her voice over to someone else. Her rise started showing up in award shows, too. In 2007, the Academy of Country Music named her Female Vocalist of the Year. She was just 23, standing in a category with heavy hitters like Faith Hill and Martina McBride, women who had been ruling radio for years. Her win was an upset, and it stirred up talk in Nashville. Some insiders still saw her as a risky newcomer. There were rumors of bruised egos and quiet feuds, whispers of people forming rival circles in response to the shift. For Miranda, that moment marked a turning point. It proved that the industry could not ignore her anymore, no matter how fiery her songs were. Around this time, her private heartbreak began to surface in more vulnerable tracks. The song More Like Her, the fourth single from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, climbed to number 17 on the country charts in early 2009. The lyrics pulled from her own breakup pain, from the quiet fear that maybe she should have been softer, kinder, more like the woman who came after her. She wrote it while trying to move on, and wondering if she had failed somehow. She did not feed those details to tabloids. She stayed private, let the song do the talking, and many fans heard their own doubts in the lines. That willingness to turn her own hurt into something other people could hold helped turn the track into a favorite. Life on the road stayed dangerous. In 2008, her tour bus crashed in Oklahoma, injuring several crew members and shaking everyone on board. For someone who had built a reputation on toughness, that moment stripped everything down. She later wrote a song called Bring Me Down that carried the weight of that fear. At the next show, she performed it with tears in her eyes, letting the audience see a crack in the armor. The crash forced her to think about what constant touring really cost her and reminded her that the life she had chosen had real physical risks. That vulnerability fed back into her music, adding another layer to a voice that had started in a cold Texas farmhouse, grown up around case files and hunting dinners, and fought its way through smoky bars, cheap studios, and television lights. Miranda Lambert walked into the Revolution era already known in Nashville, but that album turned her into something else. Revolution came out on September 29, 2009, through Columbia Records Nashville, and hit hard right away. It went straight to number 1 on the Billboard Top Country Albums chart, with 66,000 copies sold in the first week. The biggest opening of her career at that point, and her third country chart topper in a row. The record held 15 songs that bounced between fiery, loud moments and quiet, bruised ones. She pulled in then boyfriend Blake Shelton to help write and sing on Maintain the Pain, leaned on Ashley Monroe for some of the sharpest lines, and even slipped in a cover of Fred Eaglesmith's Time to Get a Gun. On paper, it looked like a strong country record. In reality, it felt more like a turning point. The numbers built slowly but steadily. Revolution went gold on February 16, 2010, crossing 500,000 units sold. By October 15, 2010, it was platinum, and by October 1, 2018, it had reached double platinum with 2 million units. By 2016, it had already sold about 1.79 million copies in the United States. Behind those numbers was a woman who had written or co-written 11 of the tracks, and started the record in February 2009 while her personal life was in pieces. She took that mess, sat down, and turned it into hooks and lines. Nashville watched her go from underdog to force, but people behind the scenes whispered about her so-called feverish writing sessions and the emotional chaos that seemed to sit under all that polish. Fans expecting light party songs were surprised to hear an album that carried grit, old wounds, and a stubborn kind of independence. The clearest proof of what she was capable of did not even come from a song she wrote. The House That Built Me, also from Revolution, stunned country music on February 13, 2011, at the 53rd Grammy Awards, when she won Best Female Country Vocal Performance. Many expected Carrie Underwood's Temporary Home to win. Instead, Miranda's name was called. The House That Built Me was written by Tom Douglas and Alan Shamblin, a gentle story about going back to the house where you grew up and trying to heal through memory. It had already gone to #1 on Hot Country Songs in May 2010 and earned platinum certification on January 31, 2011. But the awards that followed made it something bigger. At the 46th ACM Awards on April 3, 2011, it took Single Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Video of the Year. Then it picked up CMA Song and Music Video of the Year. 5 major wins wrapped around one song. For her parents, that song did not feel like fiction. They thought at first that she had written it about their own crisis in the 1980s, when her father Rick's private investigator business collapsed. They lost their Texas home, moved into a run-down rental, hunted deer, and grew vegetables to stay fed while they hovered close to homelessness. That was the house she carried in her bones. So when she stood at the Grammys and dedicated the song to her roots during a moment when her career was blasting upward, the emotion in her voice came from a real place. Revolution itself kept racking up honors. It won ACM Album of the Year in 2010 and CMA Album of the Year in 2011. That sweep made her the first woman since Shania Twain to grab both for the same project, echoing back to Shania's The Woman in Me era and a gap of 13 years between those wins. Miranda was only 27 and suddenly being placed in the same breath as someone whose 1995 album had sold 40 million copies worldwide. During her ACM acceptance speech in April 2011, she surprised everyone by dedicating the win to her broken home. She spoke openly about her parents' bankruptcy in the 1980s, the period when they were essentially homeless and living on garden food and game meat in that rough rental. Fans immediately linked these details to the ache inside the house that built me. Some in Nashville said she was sharing too much, that she was pulling back the curtain further than a star usually did, but those same stories made her feel more human, even as she stood above veterans like Keith Urban on the winners list. The way she wrote for Revolution came from real emotional wreckage. In early 2009, she went through a messy breakup and turned that pain into a 2-week burst where she wrote a big chunk of the album. Songs like Only Prettier, finished with Natalie Hemby in a cabin in Pigeon Forge, carried sharp teeth and a sarcastic smile. Only Prettier, released as a single in 2010, took aim at polished, high society types with lines that implied we are the same, only I am prettier, which some listeners read as a quiet shot at a more pop-friendly star. During 2009 and 2010, rumors floated that she and Taylor Swift were at odds. Tabloids claiming Miranda rolled her eyes at songs about boys and heartbreak during interviews. Nothing was ever confirmed, and there was no open fight. But Miranda hinted now and then that she saw herself in a different lane. On one wild day, she wrote 4 songs in 2 hours, many with Ashley Monroe, and mixed those originals with covers like John Prine's That's the Way the World Goes Round. Her team was stunned when they realized she had ended up with 11 co-writes while still tangled in drama with boyfriend Blake Shelton. With that album in hand, she finally stepped into her own as a touring act. In late 2009, she launched her first headlining Revolution tour. Through 2010, she hit more than 40 dates, pulled in millions in ticket sales, and started building the career total that would eventually reach 6.8 million tickets sold. and about $395 million in gross revenue. But success came with chaos. At the November 2009 CMA Awards, during a live performance meant to show off her new era, the dress she wore ripped in the middle of the song and flashed part of her bra on national television. It turned into a viral moment before social media had fully matured, a kind of rough country realness that she laughed off backstage but never forgot. The tour kept selling out arenas, but beneath the lights, pressure mounted as travel, expectations, and constant promotion wore her down. Just as her career hit these peaks, her personal life tied itself to another rising star. Miranda Lambert and Blake Shelton had first crossed paths in 2005, but on May 14, 2011, they married in Texas, in a huge ceremony with about 550 guests. Kelly Clarkson and Reba McEntire sang at the reception. Their wedding turned them into country music's most watched couple overnight. That same year, Miranda released For the Record on November 1, 2011. The album became her highest charting release at that time. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard Top Country Albums chart and #3 on the Billboard 200, selling 133,000 copies in its first week. By 2014, it had passed 1 million copies sold in the United States and was certified platinum. Songs on that record fed into the glow around the couple. Their duet Better Together became a favorite among fans who had bought into the idea of them as country's golden pair. For the Record also carried one of her biggest stories. Mama's Broken Heart stood out as a sharp, darkly funny track that told a family story through a breakup. The song climbed to #2 on both the Billboard Country Airplay and Hot Country Songs charts and had sold about 1.96 million copies in the United States by September 2015. Brandy Clark, Shane McAnally, and Casey Musgraves wrote it, but Miranda's voice and attitude turned it into something people recognized instantly. The lyrics came from the kind of advice she heard growing up, hearing her mother say to act like a lady after a heartbreak. That mix of humor and rebellion made the song relatable and gave her the highest position of her career on the Billboard Hot 100 at that time, reaching #20. Critics liked the production and the bite in her delivery, and the track quickly became one of those songs people used to explain who she was as an artist. As the music and the marriage grew together, so did their grip on country awards. From 2009 to 2015, Miranda won Female Vocalist of the Year at the CMA Awards every single year. Blake took Male Vocalist in 2011 and kept picking up nominations. Their names appeared side by side so often that people in the business began to talk about them as an awards machine. Some insiders quietly complained that their partnership created a kind of monopoly in mainstream country, sucking up attention and recognition that might have gone to other artists. Their combined celebrity presence seemed even larger than their individual work, and it fed both admiration and envy across Nashville. The cost of that success showed up on the road. Joint touring, including Blake's Well-Lit and Unshaken tour, revealed just how hard it was to keep a marriage steady while careers exploded. Miranda missed home dates because Blake was tied up filming The Voice in Los Angeles. She channeled the frustration into songs such as Hardest Part and leaned on writing to say what she could not always say in interviews. Sources around them later described how the constant travel, tapings, and commitments pulled them apart. Her music from that time carried lines about distance, empty hotel rooms, and the weight of loving someone you rarely saw. Then came the gossip that pushed everything into a new level of stress. In 2012, tabloids began to report cheating rumors, claiming Miranda had sent flirtatious texts or was involved with another man. Chris Young, who toured with her that year, had to publicly deny stories that tied him to the scandal and stated clearly that he would never betray their friendship. The rumors were eventually proven false, but the couple still had to address them in public, a first for their marriage. The media noise added a layer of pressure that sat on top of their already strained schedules. Many now look back at that period as the real turning point that pushed them toward an end. By the time platinum arrived on June 3, 2014, Miranda was standing at a peak. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 with 180,000 first-week sales, and later won the Grammy for Best Country Album in 2015. It also won at the CMA and ACM Awards. It went platinum by February 2016. Songs like Automatic earned her more honors, and yet Vice struggled because radio stations continued shutting women out. Even in triumph, she was fighting a system that often refused to let female artists breathe. Tin Man, released in 2016, On the Weight of These Wings, deepened her story. She wrote it on her porch with Jack Ingram and John Randall. It came from the ache of her parents' divorce and the pain from her own. She tied her heartbreak to the Tin Man's emptiness. Listeners felt the loneliness inside the song, and it became viral because people saw their own stories in it. Her platinum tour in 2014 brought massive crowds. The Indianapolis show drew more than 23,000 fans and helped the tour cross $1 million in gross revenue. But during this run, news of arguments with Blake Shelton leaked. Their relationship was fraying even as the crowds cheered. She kept performing at full force, lighting stages with pyrotechnics and guest stars like Thomas Rhett and Justin Moore. Still, the strain behind the scenes kept growing. A moment that defined the public's reaction to her came during that tour when she stopped mid-performance to scold fans who were taking selfies instead of watching the show. It went viral instantly. The backlash was intense, with people arguing about concert manners. Around the same time, her Mutt Nation Foundation began gaining attention for raising $1 million for animal shelters, but later faced accusations of mismanagement. Miranda cried through a press conference defending it. The push and pull between praise and criticism seemed endless. Her duet, Something Bad with Carrie Underwood, became her first #1 hit, but the collaboration was guided by label pressure. She admitted it was a calculated move to get radio play during a time when female artists were being pushed aside. The song went double platinum anyway, but it revealed the industry's power over even its biggest stars. Then came July 2015. On the 20th, Miranda and Blake announced their divorce after 4 years of marriage. The statement asked for privacy, but tabloids exploded with almost 200 headlines in the next 3 months. Many accused her of infidelity with completely fabricated stories and fake images. She later said it gave her symptoms similar to PTSD. She had never been prepared for that level of invasion. The heartbreak pushed her into making The Weight of These Wings, released November 18, 2016. She recorded 24 songs through late-night sessions with Frank Little and Eric Mass. It debuted at #1 on the Country Albums chart and #3 on the Billboard 200, selling more than 133,000 units in the first week. It eventually went platinum. Songs like Vice were praised, but considered too raw for country radio. While men dominated the charts, she stood on the outside with a project that critics loved. That year, she spoke openly about gender bias in country radio. Only 10% of songs played in 2016 were by women. She said she refused to cut her album down because she believed in all 24 tracks. She had faced sexism since her teenage years when bar owners told her they did not book girls. Her voice pushed other women to speak up. As she tried to heal, her dating life sparked new stories. Late 2016 brought her brief relationship with Anderson East. They appeared together on October 31st at the BMI Awards and again on November 2nd at the CMA Awards. People called it revenge dating. She later said therapy became her real anchor, and that the relationship helped her breathe again, even though it did not last long. Then came Wildcard in 2019. It marked a change in sound and a change in life. She had secretly married NYPD officer Brendan McLaughlin in January 2019, and the album became her first major chapter after the divorce. It debuted at #1 on the Top Country Albums chart with more than 72,000 first-week sales. Bluebird won ACM Song of the Year in 2020. Critics called it fearless. Her Velvet Rodeo Las Vegas residency in 2022 and 2023 became another milestone, grossing around $20 million across 30 shows. But in 2023, severe vocal strain forced her to cancel dates. For weeks, she could not speak at all. She said she worried she might not sing again. Fans held on to her through messages and stories, and slowly, with therapy and rest, she worked her way back. Her 2022 album, Palomino, brought her a #1 on country airplay with If I Was a Cowboy. Still, the pace of her life began catching up. In 2024, she admitted she reached burnout and stepped back for a sabbatical. She played golf, stayed home with Brendan, and let herself breathe. The break helped her rediscover why she loved music. Then came November 2025. Her two beloved mini horses, Sugar Pie and Adriana, both 18 years old, died on the same day. They had been part of her life for nearly 20 years. She shared her grief with fans and connected it to her Mutt Nation mission. Messages poured in, reminding her that so many people knew this kind of pain. Her 2024 album, Postcards from Texas, returned her to her roots and landed at #1 on the top country albums chart. The project carried the weight of everything she had lived through. By 2025, she announced a huge 100-date tour that marked her full return. At 42, she balanced career, marriage, and her growing role as a mentor after co-founding Big Loud Records in 2023.